Mise-En-Sesh podcast. I am George. This is Elliot, and this is episode 6. My God,
Episode 6 already.
We've done this. We've done this 6 times.
That's a month
already.
and a half.
It's quite impressive. That's a lot of time put into this. Yeah. So how have you been? Has there been any dramatic changes in your life, or just plodding along? Like
no
most other
dramatic
people?
changes. I did, however, make an investment that you will be interested in.
Go on.
Don't know if,
I can already see the logo.
can you see it? Like,
DJI. It's either a drone or a gimbal, and I'm leaning towards drone.
well, I already have a gimbal.
That's what I was
I already
thinking.
have a
can see
gimbal
it
that
at
I
the
don't use. So I thought
So why not?
I'd invest in a drone that I don't use. Look at
back. Oh, I love
that.
it.
Mavic Mini
What
2.
is it? Mavic. Ooh. What resolution?
Shoots 4K.
Very nice. You should do all your vlogs on that.
Look how small it is.
That's actually
Wait,
amazing.
Wait, where's my phone? Galaxy S9 Plus. Mavic Mini. Oh,
That's
magic. It's gone. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so this actually kind of brings me on to what could be like a decent talking point.
Go on.
Have you heard of gas syndrome? It's a very common illness that affects lots of filmmakers and photographers alike. Gear acquisition syndrome.
Oh,
It's that condition where you talk yourself into buying new stuff all the time, and you just
I just have that with everything. if I think something looks cool, I'm like, I don't need it. I don't need it. 2 days later, I really need it, regardless of how much it costs.
It's like that SpongeBob meme where it's like, I don't need it. I don't need it. You seen that? Am I just?
No.
Oh, there's
I'm sure it's a very funny
there's a meme of
reference, but I
SpongeBob when
haven't
he's
watched
like,
SpongeBob.
he's drying. I think he's in Sandy, the squirrel, whatever she's Sandy. Whatever her last name is. He's in her little dome, and there's no water in there, and he's convinced that he doesn't need water, and then he's like, I don't need it, and then he screams. He's like, I need it. I need to get my. There we go. But yeah, so like gear acquisition syndrome is something that is a term that I didn't invent. I first heard it from a YouTuber called D for Darius, which you may have heard of.
Oh yeah, no, I know.
Yeah.
Darius, yeah.
But it's like, so I've fallen victim to this, and I'm sure you have. And I've recently developed like a flowchart to help me stop wanting or buying needless things, like to stop tricking myself into thinking something's like a great investment because, like I have to have it.
Yeah.
So for me, I don't know why I'm looking at my notebook as if I've got the flowchart written down. It's not there. So like I bought this camera that I'm using right now. This is the Canon 80D. And I bought that as an upgrade to my 650D, which is there. And I bought that as an upgrade to my 1200D, which is in a box somewhere down there. And I was just thinking about this the other day. Is like I bought that 650D. That was a gas purchase. That was a pure gas purchase. Like I bought that. I was like, oh, it's got flip screen. It's got continuous autofocus in video, and oh, it's like it can shoot 60p in 720. I was like, oh my god, I have to have it. I was like, because the 1200D doesn't have autofocus in video mode, just doesn't have it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a flip LCD. It doesn't have an audio input. 650D did, and I was like, oh, I have to have that. Like if I get that, I'm going to be so much better. Bought it in my second year of uni. And with the rationale that it would help me make better uni projects and shoot behind the scenes stuff, I used it twice on 2 projects.
Oh, really?
On 2 projects, and both times it was sat on a fake Gorilla Pod thing in the corner, just recording everything, just like nothing to do with the actual project, which is why I bought it in the first place. And like, despite the fact that's half the price of this 80D, because I think that was 250 at the time. They're worth a bit less now. Like I call that like that camera right there. That's my worst purchase
Oh, really?
ever. Yeah, because I bought that thinking that I saw the headlines of having autofocus, flip out screen, had an audio, a mic jack input, all these things. I was like, oh my god, I have to have this. And then I bought it, and I convinced myself that I needed these features, even though the work that I was doing at the time never ever needed that kind of stuff. Because if I was shooting something where I needed to have audio input to the camera, like I'd be using the uni cameras. Or if I was going to shoot something where like I needed to have a screen that moved around, I was shooting on like a C100 with a external like recorder somewhere else. Yeah. So I bought that thinking that I needed it, and I really didn't need it whatsoever. Which brings me on to the drone. Actually, no, I'll talk about the gimbal first, because I bought that thinking that I needed it as well. I was like, God, the gimbals are so good. I can get so many different shots and stuff. And then I was like, once I got the gimbal and I used it, I was shooting in 60p 1080, and I was just using warp stabilizer on Premiere Pro. And then for the length of shots that I was using with the gimbal, with the work that I was doing at the time, I do use it occasionally now. And it's a bit of an unfair judgment on the gimbal because I've not had much chance to use it because of lockdown and everything. But yeah, I realised that the gimbal didn't allow me to do anything that I couldn't already do just by being steady-handed and shooting in slow-mo and warp stabilizer.
Well, there's a cool little trick I've seen used a few times. I've never tried it myself, but you get your camera straps. Obviously, you have your strap on your camera anyway, and you hook it over the lens. So, and then you've got essentially just a top handle which sways and moves with the camera. So if you're stable enough, you can just hold it rather than like a solid like metal handle where it will move along with you. And I've seen it used and it works quite well.
Yeah, cause it's more about dampening the motion than it is about completely stopping it. I used to use the camera strap and like hold it out from your body, so like it makes the camera strap taut, and you can sort of like move your whole body with it to make it smooth.
You've got like as much control as possible. Yeah, I used to do it with my tripod. I had, what is it? I've got it here actually. I'll see if I can reach it without the headset. It's one of these ones, like the Gorilla Pods. I'm pretty sure, like, if I put anything on it now, it would just give way. But I had it where, I'd have have it like that, and I'd have two handles, and I'd essentially just like have it against my body. So you've got 3 points of contact. So you've got that sort of motion. Looks really weird without the camera on it, but yeah, it's quite interesting because this actually takes us onto a talking point I had, which was sort of our DIY or low budget filmmaking approaches we've had throughout our quote unquote careers or sort of line through the industry, because I'd like to think we're in similar boats where we've had cameras and we've just looked at it and gone, I could shoot something cool with that, but if I got this, it would make it much, much better, which is where I'm assuming this gas syndrome comes in.
What is it?
Gear
acquisition syndrome.
So it's not gas syndrome, it's just gas.
Well, gas is the abbreviation of it. If you want to say, gas is shorter than saying gear acquisition syndrome every time.
But if you're saying gas syndrome, then it's gear acquisition syndrome.
Oh yeah. Okay, we'll change it then.
It's like pin.
You've just got. Okay, we'll just say got the gas.
I've got gas.
You got gas.
Everyone gets gas, right? Yeah. It's a very common thing.
But yeah, so like the flow chart that I developed through many minutes of research and development was there was two conditions that something had to meet in order for me to sort of consider actually buying it. And the first one was, does it allow you to do anything that is literally impossible with what you already have? So a good example would be if I could rewind time and I was looking at getting that gimbal over there, like, does that allow me to do something that is literally impossible with the equipment that I already had? No. The answer is no. because I can shoot stable footage with or without a gimbal. The gimbal just helps, and also it looks cool, and you feel nice because you have nice things.
Yeah.
And the second condition is, does it present potential to return on the investment that you make in it? And that's another big one.
Okay.
Because, if you're just like a hobbyist who just likes to record like really cinematic home videos, if you're really into that kind of thing, you probably don't need a gimbal to record your family's trip to Whitby. You probably don't. Like if you've got,
I don't know.
If you've got enough expendable income, then
intensive.
sure, go for it. But if you're thinking about it as like an essential purchase, you don't need a gimbal to shoot home videos. You don't need a gimbal to shoot a lot of things.
One thing I've found, because we both watch Peter McKinnon, and he's sort of infamous for his B-roll stuff. So it's like he will make something as basic as make a cup of coffee look so stupidly cinematic.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's like, I'm like, yeah, I want to go make a cup of coffee now. And it's one of those things where I literally made a stupid little skit, which is like how to be British or something. I can't remember what it was. I made it years ago. But it was using this camera and that Gorilla tripod I showed you. That was my first setup. And I'd literally just move the camera around to like the different cupboards in my kitchen.
Yeah.
I had it in the fridge at one point as well. And it was just me getting out a mug, me getting out a tea bag, me getting out the milk, and then close-up shots of me doing stuff. And it's just then cutting it together. It's like, it looks kind of cool. And looking back on it, I'm like, that's probably one of the most creative times in my life, because I didn't have all these elaborate things of like, oh, I want to do really cool one-shot things where there's this gliding motion. It's like, no, I just looked at it and went, how can I make that really boring situation seem quite interesting? But that, like you with the gimbal, again, if I can reach it without like yanking my headset off, this would be great. Because I got gimbal like you.
Same one, isn't it?
Pretty sure it's the same gimbal. And I've used it a couple of times. And then I've also got a cage for my camera. And this, I regret buying the gimbal quite a lot for the same reasons you do, which is I could have done everything without it. Like, I'm literally just finding reasons to use the gimbal.
Yeah, it's a nice to have, not a need to have.
It's really nice to have, but it's not something where it's like it's going to get me work. It's not like it's not going to benefit my filmmaking in any way. But with the cage, this I don't regret at all, because essentially I can just put my camera in, have like a light mounted one side, a monitor on the top, and a microphone on the other side, and that's essentially I'm good to go. But then what I found quite funny is I essentially threw my own DIY into it, and I made it so I could then have. Like, I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep popping around to get equipment. So this is
I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, so this is a selfie stick, but it's designed for a 360 camera. So it's quite rigid. It's quite long. I don't know if you can even see the end of it. It's quite long. And essentially what I do is use it as a boom pole. I clip it onto the cage. I have a wireless microphone. And essentially I've just got a one-man show there. I've got the lights on it. I've got the microphone like boomed over whatever subject it is. I've got the monitor. I can pull focus like with one hand. And that probably cost, all in all, less than half of what the gimbal cost, and I've used that more than I've used the gimbal. And it's just quite interesting that, I think a good way to put it is I look at it because it looks cool and it looks all technological and exciting. I'm like, I really want that. In reality, the only thing I probably ever need to really upgrade over time are the camera and the microphone. That's about it. Everything else, like lights, are going to be doing the same thing they are now to what they are in like 20 years time. The new ones might be slightly brighter and they might be able to change to new colors we haven't even found yet, but they're still going to do the same thing that a light does today, which is turn on, turn off, and you can adjust the brightness to like scene. But it's looking back on it with clarity now, I really regret buying the gimbal just because I don't have any need to use it at the minute. I bought one because you got one, and I looked at it and went, "Oh, I really want one. Like I've got the money, I can get it. You know, I even sat there for like a week. I was like, I don't need it. Why do I need it? No, I really, really want it, and then I bought it.
The thing is, like, there are certain use cases where a gimbal is almost essential, but there's a lot of use cases where it's completely unessential. Like, I bought the gimbal because at the time I was applying for a job at a car detailing company, and they wanted to have, you know, motion shots of cars. You know, you'd film it out of a window or something like that. You know, like very sort of situations where you could do it handheld, but to get that real steadiness, you can't just rely on a steady hand when you're hanging out the side of a car. Like, you know, having a gimbal in that situation is like gold dust. I didn't get that job in the end anyway. But that's why I taught myself into getting that gimbal. And in fairness, I don't regret it yet because the entirety of my ownership has been during lockdown. So it's not like I've been able to like meet up with friends or like call you up and go out and shoot something because it has been locked down. So you know, I will evaluate that purchase, you know, hopefully in a few weeks when lockdown's over and I actually get a chance to use it maybe. But you know, it's not something that I regret, but it's something that I definitely could have done without. But at the time, I thought I was going for a job where I would have used it all the time, every day. So
yeah. No, to be fair, like, you're mentioning about hanging out the back of a car, side of a car, and we did our third year film. That's exactly what I did.
Yeah,
I
through the sunroof.
hang out the boot of a car. What was it? One was sunroof, and then one was boot of a car.
Oh yeah,
no,
you sat in the boot once.
The final shot was the boot of a car because I had to hop out and then do a tracking shot. What was it? DJ Osmo.
The original Osmo.
So we had like the mobile.
I think I've still got the picture that we took.
What of me? And
if I can find it, I'll put it up and I'll put it over the screen now. I think you know what picture I'm talking about.
Is that where I'm hanging out at the top and you're driving?
Yeah, like I'm hanging out the driver's side window, like pointing forward, and you're hanging out the sunroof.
With the
health and safety was not present on that day of shoot.
That was an interesting day.
And that's another thing. Sort of, it's kind of related to the gas, but also not really because we didn't acquire it. But we used the Osmo on that film. Boy, we didn't need to. we had no.
I mean, it was good. Like, it was good to have, but yeah, like I feel like we limited ourselves
massively with that
because we used it. It's the tracking shot. It didn't really work looking back on it.
Like the Osmo is one of those other pieces of equipment that it's got a few use cases where it's brilliant, but then it's when like. Because I remember we had the conversation with our producer, Kerry, and we were like, I don't even know if it was a group conversation. I spoke to someone about it, probably you. And basically the choice was using the C100 that we had with a glide cam.
A glide.
Or use the Osmo. And I'm pretty sure we used the Osmo because the glide cam was a pain to balance with the C100 because it was.
It's a stupidly heavy bit of kit.
Yeah, like it's a huge piece of bulk, and also it was an issue with the university at the time was like the media loans department. All the glide cams that I ever used from media loans always had like something missing, or it was all a bit broken. So we just didn't want to deal with the hassle. So we thought the Osmo would be the answer to all our problems, but it actually turned out to really quite impact the final quality of the shot that we used it to get.
It suddenly goes from quite a nice framing to what looks like it's been shot on an iPhone. And it really jars me every time I see it. Just because I know the amount of I was there. But like, I know the amount of effort that went into it, and then the payoff just isn't there.
Yeah.
It's a nice shot.
It's a nice idea.
It isn't necessary. Yeah.
But the limitations of the Osmo as a unit really like strangled the potential of that shot. Because if we did that, if we put in the effort to do that on a Steadicam, a glide cam, sorry, with the C100, you know, with the nice cinema lens. Obviously, pulling focus might have been a bit difficult, but you know, if we had put in the effort to make that work, the quality of that shot would be so much higher. It would be more stable. It would be cleaner because the Osmo is terrible in low light. It's a tiny little camera like this big.
I was gonna say, yeah,
Like,
the low light bit. It literally goes to a black screen at
yeah,
one point.
like we might as well have just like put like a title, like a graphic image text saying like Brian went to the kitchen. 5 minutes later, ... back, and then we're back in the living room.
It's just the fact I remember editor wanted to cut 2 clips. He wanted to stitch them together. I remember turning around and saying, "The hell are you doing? Like, we did it in one take, so we wouldn't need to edit. Why do you think we shot it so many times?" And then watching it after it's been like color graded or whatever it was he did to it. Yeah, he just put a LUT on it or something. But I just looked at it and I went, it looks like we've cut. It looks like we've intentionally done a wipe so we can cut between 2 shots. And I just remember being so pissed off at it. But I was like, there's nothing we can do now.
Yeah.
We can't do reshoots. And yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, let's not go back into the rabbit's hole that is the amount of things that annoyed us about our 3rd year film. That
was interesting.
It's a good learning experience though. Learned a lot of stuff from that, but
I did learn a lot, but also
it left a lot to be desired.
It's one of those things that I look back at it, I'm like, well, there's so many things differently, but
yeah. The thing is, like there's 2 things that tanked that project in particular. It was the fact that I'd written this long script, which again, I don't think the original premise of the long form of the story, the 40-page one, I don't think that was too ridiculous. I think that, again, I'd write it differently today, but I still stand by the original story. The issue was that story was written with 2 weeks of shooting in mind in the location, and we had 1. So we had to cut it down to like just make it work. Basically, we had these little bits that was basically these little set pieces that we were just trying to get to, and that just ruins a film completely. You don't do that if you have to rewrite. And it was also the fact that like, you know, myself as the director, I had no input on the editing process whatsoever, like 0, because of, you know, our editor was inconvenient to us at best.
That's one way to put it.
Like, the editor refused to edit in the the proper edit suites at the university, and he insisted in doing it all at home on his laptop, where none of us could have input on it. Which obviously, as the director, especially, that's quite a big thing to withhold is an eye in the editing process. But yeah, like finishing up on the gas topic, like I got that drone because to me it meets both the criteria, because again, number 1 was, does it allow you to do something that is literally impossible with the stuff that you already have? I can't.
What do you mean?
Fly.
Just get a really long selfie stick. You'll be fine.
That's what monopod's for. You just hold it up like that.
Run around.
Just throw the camera up. Put it on the gimbal and put it on lock mode, then throw the gimbal up and it will hold it steady.
Oh,
and then
do you imagine someone actually doing that?
I bet it's been done.
Probably.
There'll be some like small YouTube channel over there with some like rich kid who's like tried to get some views on like a clickbait thing. He was like, you know, throwing a gimbal through the air instead of a drone. I bet it's out there. If we search hard enough, we'll find it. The second one was, does it present the potential to return on investment? And again, to me, it does, because again, it allows me to do something that is impossible without it. So it expands what you can do. Like, say if you want to shoot corporate, you can do these external aerial shots of a building, or if you're shooting a landscape from high up, or if you're shooting there's all kinds of things you can do with a drone that you just simply can't do on foot because, well, it flies.
There was an issue because I bought quite a bit of camera kit all in one go, and I think a drone was on my list, but I didn't end up getting it because I don't know if it's a thing in the UK in general, but around where I live, you need a license to fly a drone.
So the reason I got that drone in particular is they cracked down on drones a while ago. Must be over a year ago now. Basically, they changed a bunch of rules to make it really difficult for people to fly drones. But there was not a loophole, but there was an exception. If the drone was under 250 grams, you didn't have to have like a license. You didn't have to be registered in the same way you would be if the drone weighed over 250 grams. So DJI made the DJI Mini, and it weighs 249 grams. That's why this drone exists, because for people like me who don't want to like register as a drone pilot and go through all the tests and stuff, it's not as bad in the UK as it is like in America and Canada. It's really difficult to get a drone that's over 250 grams in the air legally. But in the UK, with that, I'm generally good to fly pretty much wherever, unless obviously like near an airport, near a stadium, or a densely populated area, like like tall buildings, for example, or like any area. It's like a little feature within the DJI app which has all these no-fly zones on the map, so you can see where you are. And plus, there's like tons of resources online for you to see where's no-fly zones.
I'm pretty sure where I live would just be one big no-fly zone.
Yeah, like I think, well, London's tricky because obviously you've got the airport in the middle. Is it London City Airport? Is that what it's called?
You got City Airport, you got Gatwick, you got
it's surrounded by airports on all sides,
Stansted,
and you've got the airport in the middle, and you've got helicopters going everywhere. So drones in London,
nada. Go, yeah.
But over here, like, I'm pretty much unrestricted until I reach an airport or a stadium, which gives me lots of free sky.
Money.
Gonna record all those clouds.
Fair enough. Right. Going off that a little bit then, what do you think is a bit of kit which is totally worth the money? Like, totally worth investing a bit more money into? Because for me, I'd say when I bought all that kit and stuff, I bought 2 lenses. And where are they? They're Yongnuo, whatever the brand is. Yongnuo.
I've got one of those myself.
Yeah, so I got a couple of these. I got 35 and I got 50.
Yeah.
And they're great. They do what they do what I need them to do. But when it comes to racking focus,
terrible.
They're awful. Absolutely awful. It's so slow to focus. It's really annoying. So I'd say definitely, if I had the money, I would invest in lenses.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, because my ideal setup currently would be a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, 4K. Don't need 6K. 4K camera. And there's a set of, I think it's 5 or 6 lenses spanning from like a 24mm up to like 120 or something. And there's like 6 lenses. And for the lenses, $2,500, which is 2.5 times the price of the camera itself. And I'm just there like, well, I don't need that. I could just get a cheap version of it off Amazon. That's what I did. And oh boy.
Yeah, so
yeah.
Okay, this is kind of another sort of segue back to gas, but also not really. I don't want to keep talking about gas. But so when I first, I can't get that in a box. So when I first got my first camera, it was a Canon 1200D. I got it for about £100. That's the going rate at the time. This is back when I was very first getting into cameras and this kind of thing. So I was more interested in photography than I was video stuff, because if I wanted to do video stuff, I was doing that at university with the university equipment. So I wanted to have a nice little DSLR that I could take pictures with, because I sort of enjoyed taking pictures for a bit. Then I got bored. So I bought a 1200D because it took good pictures. It did do video. Didn't have autofocus, didn't have audio input, but it did do video. But where I went wrong with... I won't say I went wrong, but at the time it was an 18-55 kit lens, but it was the cheapest 18-55 kit lens that I could find, and it was like an old version. It was like one of the first 18-55 lenses that they used to ship out. So it wasn't like like an STM like you've probably got and what I've got now. It was like it still had a stepper motor. So if you did autofocus on it, it would go like that, and it had like the old rubber, really thick rubber thing to zoom in and out. And in fairness, the image quality wasn't bad, but it was just quite a
like
it wasn't bulky
thing.
It was just it had a very low ceiling. Like it was good for that camera with that lens was good with that camera. But if I upgraded my camera, that lens wasn't going to go with it, and it didn't in the end.
Yeah.
Which is when I bought my 650D with a 18-55 STM, because that had the smooth, the quiet autofocus, which was just so amazing after I'd been with that, because that was so loud. It was like a steam train coming through. I remember Matt, who was on last week and a couple of weeks before that, I shot something. It was like a mockumentary that he was shooting, and I remember me and another person were operating cameras, and I had the main camera and we're using my camera and lens as the B cam, and she used the autofocus before shooting, and she was like, "I think this lens is broken." I was like, "No, it's not. It's not broken. It's just ancient." But yeah, so I had that lens. I bought the 18-55 STM, which was nice. It had good autofocus and stuff, but it was still a slow lens. It's f3.5 to 5.6. And at the time I was watching a lot of YouTube, and I was, again, Peter McKinnon's probably a big influence in this, but it was talking about like get a fast lens because you get that shallow depth of field. Bokeh, must have bokeh. So I bought this Yongnuo 50mm f1.8, which is a rip-off of the Canon 50mm f1.8. Same one you've got, I believe. You've got a 35 one. Yeah.
35 and a 50, yeah.
And I bought that, and again, that was good for a time because I used it for pictures mostly. The autofocus was, again, it was loud and like a bit cumbersome, but for pictures it was actually okay. But then I used it for video a couple times, and I was just like, why? Why did I buy this? This thing is terrible. Like, the focus wheel is so small that you can't really accurately rack focus. And then if you use autofocus, which you shouldn't be doing anyway if you're shooting narrative, but if you used autofocus, it was so loud. It was like, which
autofocus is one of those things. I've never turned it on until this podcast, because obviously I can't rack focus like this. The camera's too far away, and also it means I can move around, and I don't need to worry about staying within focus. But I refuse to use it if I'm shooting anything, regardless if it's narrative or it's documentary. I refuse to use autofocus, just because there's so many ways it could go wrong. Because obviously it's designed to track faces, so if you're focusing on a subject and all of a sudden something else pops up which just slightly resembles a face, that's it. You've lost your focus. But then obviously there are people who swear by it. It's like they won't do manual.
I get that comes down to what type of filmmaking you're doing. If you're shooting like travel videos or like YouTube or vlogs or corporate stuff, then autofocus is really good because you have to be quick. Whereas shooting narrative films and short films, fiction films, or in controlled situations, like you have the time to make sure you can focus it manually yourself and get it perfect. So using you wouldn't use autofocus when you're shooting, like, you wouldn't use autofocus at work, would you? Like, you just don't, because you have that manual control, and that is an aspect of the shot. If the director wants something to be in focus, obviously, like newer cameras, you can just tap on the screen, it will focus on that spot. But if it's on auto, it'll move around if it wants to. So having that manual control is obviously important for a lot of creative reasons, but also like a technical reason. Is like you can get critical focus, like you can punch in and you can focus it perfectly, whereas autofocus is always sort of in the neighborhood. But getting back to the lenses, what we're talking about is I got that f1.8, and it just never, like, it gave me the shallow depth of field, but the image quality wasn't great, and it was just terrible for video, and the autofocus was slow and crap and awful. So, which that, again, is similar to 650D. I saw the feature of f1.8. Oh, bokeh. Ooh. And I thought, oh, I'll have that. I invested in the cheaper option because I thought it would do the job. and for a small time it did, but I outgrew it very quickly. So what I wish I'd have done at the time was gone straight from my original lens to my main lens now, which is this one, which is a monster. It's the Canon 17 to 55 f2.8, which it sounds a bit of a strange upgrade path because the focal length is basically the same as a kit lens, but f2.8 constant. So it's f2.8 at 17, it's f2.8 at 55. It's not like on a kit lens where it gets darker as you zoom in.
But it also sounds, literally from you picking it up, it sounds like
it weighs more than my 80D and my 650D combined. Like it's a hefty lens. Like it's a real like high quality lens. Like that lens will be with me until I eventually have enough money to switch to Sony. Like I'm never going to get rid of that lens unless I absolutely have to.
Because the lens I'm using is the 18-55 kit lens, and this is the only lens I've ever shot YouTube videos on. I've messed around with my 35 and my 50, but I've never shot anything on them, like properly. And this lens, I feel like, well, just this camera in general, it's done so much for me. But when I do finally upgrade at some point, it'll be one of those things I won't ever want to get rid of it, but also it's something I know I can rely on. I can jump back to it if I really need to. But then the 1755, it's one of those things where it's the same as this, but it's better in every way.
I remember I got this at the start of lockdown actually. Again, that was a bit of a gas purchase because I was a bit sort of down because lockdown got everyone down, and I was like, I want something to make me feel happy, so I got that. And I remember going out with Holly and going for a walk around West Common in Lincoln, and I was just snapping pictures of trees, horses, grass, things that I'd taken pictures of hundreds of times before, thousands of times before, with my other lenses. And I remember getting back on the computer and I was just like, wait, what? Like it was a level of sharpness that I, like in the images that I just simply, I just like, I didn't know how to process it. I called Holly through and I was just like, she was like, did you take that? And I was like, yeah. Like it was so stupidly sharp. There was like very minimal chromatic aberration. It was so sharp. The bokeh was, people have a little bit of a problem with the bokeh on that lens. I don't mind it. Bokeh was so nice, and it was just like, I was like, I think it was £270 at the time, which was quite a good deal for that actually. I think they're worth around 300 now. And I was just like, I've spent money on. I bought two 18-55s. I bought a cheap 18-55, an old 18-55 rather, and then I bought the best 18-55 kit lens that there was, the IS-STM, and then I bought the Yongnuo f1.8 because I thought I needed that shallow depth of field. Those three lenses combined added up to roughly the cost of this, and this is better than all of them at everything. And if I had that if I just invested in that right at the start and just bit the bullet, I would have, I'd have been making such better stuff so much earlier on, because I didn't have to go through this process of like wishing that I had something a little bit better. I wouldn't have had to sort of live with the confines of buying cheap or old, outdated stuff. And that lens would, like I said, if I bought it then, I'd still have it now. So to answer the original question, if there's one thing that you can invest in, it's lenses, because they carry with you.
Yeah.
Like camera bodies, they come and go, because you can get like when the 80D came out, it was like, oh my god, it's amazing, the autofocus is great, the 1080s are so sharp, and now it's like people don't even buy it anymore. No,
it only shoots like 1080.
The new Canon, is it the Canon R5 shoots 8K?
I might be wrong there.
No, it shoots 8. It's either the R5 or the R6, whichever one's like the big brother. I think the R5 is the big one. That shoots 8K. Okay. And it's just like, now what this camera at its time was like, everyone wanted it. Casey Neistat used to use this with a 11 to 18 or something. I can't remember. But Casey Neistat used to use the 80D, and everyone was like, "Oh, it's so great! It's such a good YouTube camera." Now people don't care. You know, the camera goes, but the lenses, if you invest in good lenses, they will stay with you until you change camera systems. If you buy a really good Canon lens at the start, you will have it until you don't have Canon anymore.
My issue with that is, though, that yes, it's a good lens, but I don't really take photos on my DSLR. I only use it for filmmaking. That's the reason I bought it. That's the reason why I got this specific one. Because at the time when I got it, it had a flip-out lens. It had autofocus, which, like I said, I've never really used. It has an audio input, and it came with a kit lens. Anytime I want to take a photo, my phone is a much cleaner picture. But when it comes to lenses, I don't want to spend 300 quid on a lens because I'm not going to get anything out of that. That's literally just for my personal use. When all I'm going to do is sit in my bedroom and make a YouTube video. Like, I'm not using it in any way where I'm going to benefit from it, like taking photos or anything. So I can't bite that bullet, even though in the long run, I know it would serve me so much better than buying these crappy 35 to 50s. But I can't do that because I don't see the benefit of it. With those two lenses I've got, with the 35 and the 50, the only reason I bought them is because I felt like it would make me appear more professional. It's like, yes, look at me, I've got multiple lenses. On an actual film shoot, I wouldn't pull those out at all. Unless I was really trying to get a very specific shallow depth of field, I wouldn't use them. I'd stick with this because I can change the focus, I can change the distance, I can do everything else with this, and it covers those focal lengths. Really, like, I've literally sat here and thought about, why did I get them? Because the smart thing to do would have been get focal lengths I couldn't cover on this lens, so like an 85 or a 100 or a 75 or something. Like, there's no benefit to having them because it's all covered in this lens, and this lens is something better.
This is something that could have been prevented with the Maris gas prevention flowchart. Does it allow question one? Does it allow you to do something that is impossible to do with what you already got? Yeah, I'm gonna start printing all the. I'm gonna print these onto little cards and like sell them.
I was gonna say I want one to have in my wallet or something. Just whenever I think of buying
a little sticker on you.
Is it going?
A little sticker on your credit card.
To benefit me? Like, can you do this already? Are you going to get a return from it? Looking at like a bit of food, like, I guess not. No.
I need to print some like little business cards that I can ship out to all my friends. Like a picture of me being like, and like,
do you need it?
I could do with a few of them for myself, to be honest. But again, like,
just wallpaper in the background.
Bouncing off what you were talking about, like what you need and what you should invest in, it varies from person to person. Like you use your camera almost exclusively for video and filmmaking, and that's where those newer lenses that you've got, they sort of fall a bit flat because they're not sharp. They don't really have that sharpness.
Yeah.
They don't have an increase in image quality over a good kit lens. So although they do give you the shallow depth of field, it's sort of negated by the usability aspect that drags them down. So for you, it's easy just to use the kit lens because it covers the focal lengths, the image quality is good, and you can pull focus very easily. You can use it very well. You know, that's...
Yeah.
So like...
Well, I go back to... my mind's just going back to when we were filming the thing in the container yard or whatever it was. You were lying on the ground and throwing a Rubik's Cube towards the camera. Yeah. And essentially what we needed, so we were using the 50, like a Yongnuo 50, and we just needed this Rubik's Cube to... It was that exact lens. We needed the Rubik's Cube to come, I think it was about that far away from the lens for it to be in focus. And that's how you know it's cheap, because they're so unforgiving. Like, when it comes to film, with photos... a bit different because obviously it's like with film, once it's like, if it doesn't come into focus at all, that's it, you're done for. With photos, obviously you just hold down the shutter and you'll get a picture which covers it, like with movement, that is, obviously. but it's with, say, a more expensive lens. Even if there's like 50 quid difference in it, because I can't remember how much the actual Canon 50mm is, but I don't think it's more like 150 or
The
something.
Canon 50mm f1.8, I think new is just over 100, but used you can get them for like 80 quid.
Yeah, so it's like with that, it would have the same focal distance, like focal length, obviously, but the background wouldn't be as just flat blur. Like with these lenses, I find it's sort of you've got your focal distance, and then after that, it's you can't make it out whatsoever. It's just
Yeah,
color.
it's like like the shallow depth of field is there, but the like obviously like the shallow depth of field comes from like the focus plane. It's like a physical distance where things are in focus. So if say at 50mm f1.8, let's say your focus plane is probably about an inch. F1.8, it's probably about an inch, maybe 2 inches. I'm not exactly sure. I'm sure Jack Shelburne could tell us exactly, but it's probably about that much. So let's say if you have this pen and you want to focus on this pen, your focal plane is only that long, your pen's this long, so the tip of the pen is going to be in focus, which is fine if you have a sharp lens. But with the Yongnuo, where that became a problem was it wasn't sharp when it was in focus.
It was very soft. Yeah,
Like the critical focus on the Yongnuo was still soft, so it always sort of, with the shallow depth of field combined with having a soft critical focus, it just made everything look a little bit out of focus all the time, which is one of the reasons why I have not used that since. I've not used that for about 9 months. It's not been attached to a camera for a long time.
One of the things when we were setting up this podcast, obviously we were both like, right, we'll set up our DSLRs, we'll do this, and I tried out my lenses, and I was like, right, well, I mean, if I'm not moving anywhere, I can have the focus set, it's fine, I'll do whatever. And I put on those two lenses, and I just looked at it, I was like, I don't like it because the background is it's just so flat. Like you can either have it where it's like I'm perfectly in focus, but the background is just a blur. Like there's no making out what it is. So you'd see the red, like the red light behind me, but other than that, it's like you've got sod all.
Yeah, like it's something they see a lot on YouTube. When you look at the smaller YouTubers, they obviously gone out and bought like an f1.8, an f1.4, whatever, and they just set it to that. And it's so ridiculously blurry that it's a bit too much. Like obviously, like having a blurry background helps you focus on the subject. But when the background is like non-existent, it's only the subject. So like when I'm watching someone who's shooting like a YouTube video, like a talking headpiece like this, and everything else is out of focus, it feels like it's like this. It's like all you can see is them. It's like, hello, let's talk about cameras. Like it's just too much. Like, so it's
yes. Like I do totally agree with that, but then also I do feel like
sometimes it works.
Depending on what it is. If it's a topic where it's like it's quite an important topic, I feel like having a totally washed out background could be quite beneficial because it means they're not trying to distract you with anything in the background. It's literally just you're focusing on me. That's it. So depending on what the
every different piece has its own use. Like there's different uses for stuff.
But yeah, like you say, like people who they've obviously just looked at something and gone, oh, like this person's got this, I'm going to get it as well, which is, I feel like where we've both had a downpour in terms of, oh, look at this gimbal, this person's used it.
Well, it's a byproduct of YouTube and influencer culture because like there are so many YouTubers out there who obviously they make videos, they teach you how to take pictures or shoot video, how to do this and that, talk about cinematography and stuff, and inevitably they will make videos about products. What camera should you get? What lens should you get? And then usually these people are well established, so they'll talk about all this expensive stuff and they're like, oh yeah, this is the best thing to get, and you sort of think, oh, I want that. But then that's compounded with the fact that YouTube is like, it is a business and people get sponsored to do product reviews on things, which I have no problem with. It's how it works. But people sort of forget that the companies are sponsoring these YouTubers and sending them these products for them to review, to talk to you about, because they want you to buy them. Like all your content that you watch on YouTube, if you're someone who's into all these like, tech YouTubers or photography YouTubers, cinematography YouTubers, there's the big ones, the big successful ones, they are getting paid to make you want whatever product they're talking about. And again, I've got no issue with that. That's what it is. But it's like it's a good thing in terms of you get good content. Like there's tons of YouTubers that I love watching who make the kind of stuff that I'm talking about right now, and I enjoy watching it. And then there's always going to be a small cohort of people who they will watch that YouTube video and they're like, every time that person uploads a video, they're like, I need it. Like I watched you don't watch Potato Jet, do you?
No.
So I watched one of his videos, and it was I'm part of the notification squad. So so it came up, and I watched it like 25 minutes after it came out, and someone left a comment which I thought was quite, like, it was a good sort of joke, but it was also quite a good representation of a serious problem. It was comment. It was like, every time Potato Jet uploads a video, I add something else to my Amazon wish list. And I was like, yeah, like that's true.
No, that's exactly how it goes. Because I've definitely had it where I've watched something and I've not been keen on it, but because of the person, like I like the person reviewing it and they like it, I'm suddenly like, oh, actually it's not as bad. When I got this camera, I was quite naive in terms of I didn't look into it. I just looked at the cameras which were on offer, like Curry's or whatever it was. I looked at them, I was like, right, it needs to fit the fact that it can shoot video, it needs to have an audio input, and it needs to have a flip screen. That was it. Those were the three specs I had. It didn't need an interchangeable lens at all, because I didn't think about that at the time. But this one happened to fit all the criteria. I then got home. I don't think I'd bought it. I don't think it had arrived yet. I think we'd paid for it and it was going to be delivered like the next day. I got home and suddenly it was like, oh, right, the Canon 700D. Wow, this sounds really, really cool. I'll look into all these videos about people like loving it. And there was, I can't remember the name of the channel, but it's an Asian guy who's based in the UK now, but he essentially, his whole thing is reviewing cameras.
Yeah.
And I remember watching this video. This is how I came across him, actually.
Oh, it's not. You got glasses.
Yeah.
Is it Kai?
He's called Kai.
Yeah, Kai. Yeah,
Kai.
Yeah, I've seen Kai. Yeah.
Yeah,
quite sarcastic.
It sounds like
he does.
Kai W now or something, but I can't remember what it was before.
I know what you're talking about.
But yeah, so he reviewed the camera and he was like, I mean, it shoots video. Check. It has a flip-up screen. Check. It has audio. It has interchangeable lens. Other than that, there's nothing spectacular about this camera. And I just sat there and I just suddenly felt so deflated. Yeah, I just suddenly was like, oh God, have I rushed into it? Have I made a mistake? Should I have looked something more expensive? But the camera turned up. Obviously, I didn't say anything to my mum because she'd spent all this money on it. The camera turned up, and immediately, as soon as I unboxed it, that video flew out of my mind. I totally forgot about it. I just started shooting stuff. And I didn't look into tutorials. I didn't look at how people had the camera set up. I literally went through, I shot some stuff, and I was like, this looks weird. I think when I first started filming, I didn't really understand frame rate, so I was like, 50 is a higher number than 24. I'll shoot in 50. And then when I'm trying to edit on a 24 frame timeline, I'm like, why does it play back really weirdly? It's like I knew nothing, so I learned everything I learned about cameras from this camera. Literally just going through the menu. And I know D for Darius, he says he got this camera where he can literally go through the menu blindfolded because he's used this camera so much over the 10 years he's owned it. You can go through the menu blindfolded and you can know exactly what's happening. And I'm like, I don't know it that much because I don't tend to mess around with it in that regard. Like I know what settings I need to change and when I need to change them. But it's something I invested money into it, and because it served the purpose I needed it to serve, which was film crappy YouTube videos in my bedroom. That's the purpose I needed it for. That's the purpose it did, and it's stayed with me for, when did I get it? 2015, 2016? I think we looked into it a couple of weeks ago. But I've had it for a long, long time now.
Yeah, I'd say that was like an A+ investment. Because even though it's not the best video camera, it was good for you at the time. It did what you needed to do at the time, and it still does what you need it to do. And it taught you a whole bunch of stuff along the way. Like
Oh,
that's a
definitely.
good investment in gear. Like if you'd have gone back and be like, if you'd in an alternate dimension where like you went down to your mum and was like, cancel the order, I need to get what was the best camera in 2015? I need to get the Canon 70D. At the time, it was like £1,000. Yeah, I need that. That's better. I want that.
That's
Like
like double the price, but I need
you
that.
would have done everything the same, but you would have spent an extra £500 or so.
Yeah. What I do remember though very vividly when buying this camera was my mum was the one who pushed for it, but it was you need a bag for it, you need a camera bag. And I didn't know much about DSLRs at the time, but what I did know is when you're traveling with it, when you're not using it and it's in a bag, you detach the lens because otherwise you risk damaging it in transport. And we turned to the salesman and said, "Oh, right, could we have a bag this would fit in? It doesn't need to be like a big rucksack or anything like that. Just literally a camera bag where the lens and the camera will sit in there." And he went, "Yeah, cool." Picked up the camera as a whole unit, plopped it in the bag, and went, "Yeah, look, it fits." And I just remember looking at him like, "Huh?" Um, but yeah, like going back to the point of if I could, I'd have a Blackmagic 4K camera, like a pocket cinema camera. But that wouldn't do this. It wouldn't be able to just sit here while I could monitor it and just do essentially a glorified webcam. It wouldn't do that because I'd look at it on this pedestal of like it's 4K. I can't be doing something like that. It needs to be glorified on a shelf. Like it can't. No dust can ever touch it. And I'd be terrified to use it. But because I've had this one for so long, like I know what it does. I know it doesn't. It's not the most expensive, but it does exactly what I need it to. The fact I've never had an issue with it, it's never malfunctioned. It's never caused me any problems. It's reliable, and I would swear by this camera again. Like if I could go back and change anything, it would be buying those two bloody lenses and the gimbal. That's it when it comes to like my camera gear. Like, because another thing, actually, moving on from lenses and cameras in general, is another bit of kit I think is totally worth the money, is lighting.
Yeah.
Because you can't see it. I don't know if I can. No, I can't. Like, I can't move it because it's so big.
Softbox light.
Yeah, so I've got this huge softbox light here, which just sits off to the side. I don't even know if you can hear me. It just sits off to the side of my camera, and that just essentially lights my whole thing. Like I have room lights, which I have turned off because they're tungsten. I've got this light; it's just an accent light. But this thing, I've had since I think I got it within a year of getting this camera. So this light has lasted a long, long time. I've never changed the bulb. I have another one. I have another one of the softbox lights, but it was actually moving to uni. The bulb broke. So I did have two. I've only got one now. But lighting is another thing where it's the money you put into it is immediately worth it. Obviously, you don't need to be spending £500 on a light if you're just going to be doing YouTube videos. Just get either a ring light if that's the kind of thing you want, or get softbox lights. I remember watching a video. Oh, this is a bit of a throwback for me. I used to watch Emma Blackery on YouTube.
Can't say I've heard of her.
Don't know if you know her. So she was like one of the big. There was like a squad of vloggers who went around together at the time. This is when I was like 16, 17. But I just remember she upgraded her setup, and it was essentially she got a nicer camera, which I think shot at like 2K or something at the time, or whatever the big thing was. So she put a lot of money into this camera. She then got an external monitor. So instead of looking there, she'd look over to the side, and I was like, "Wow, that's really cool." She had two softbox lights, and she had a hair light. I don't know if it's still referred to as that, but essentially a softbox light, like a top light. And I just remember thinking, I need a top light. I need to be as professional as this. I just looked, and then I just caught myself, and I was like, "What am I saying? I don't." The lights I have do everything I need them to. The first light I had, it's not in this room anymore. It's gone somewhere. It was a desk lamp, just a desk lamp with like a, what is it, like a gooseneck or whatever the neck thing is. the bendy ones, like the picks on them. So it was that, and then I had a bit of paper literally taped
That's
over
what
the
I used
front
to
of
use.
it as a softbox. That was a health and safety hazard. Like that should have caught fire. Somehow it didn't. But that's how I lit myself. My microphone was, again, I don't think it's in here. It was a Guitar Hero microphone, like a USB mic, which I just plugged in, recorded via like Audacity with that, and that was my setup. Like I learned very quickly, essentially, lighting, audio are more important
Yeah.
than visual.
So I'm going to revise my
Lighting,
answer that I gave to your question earlier on, which was about what would you invest in? What's the best thing to invest in? The best item, if you're going to spend money on something, lenses, all the way, lenses. But if you want to invest time and effort and knowledge, invest it in learning how to light your scene properly. Like, sort of 50, probably more than 50% of cinematography is lighting. I'd say probably like 80%, 70% of cinematography is lighting the subject properly. Like if you don't light it, it doesn't matter how many Ks your camera shoots in or how many f-stops your camera doesn't have. Like it doesn't matter if it's lit poorly. And like right now, I spent some time on this lighting setup, which again I think is quite, it's not perfect by any means because it's in a spare room, but it's pretty decent. And it's a softbox light which was like £40. I bought it as a set, but individually it's like £40. That light was 20 quid. The light behind me that's blue is 60 quid, but that's a non-essential. Like that's not a lot of money at all, and you don't even have to use a softbox light. Like I said, you can use household lamps and stuff like that, and just be creative with it.
Oh yeah.
But if you understand the fundamentals of how you light something, about having a key light, having a fill light, having a kick light, hair light, like you mentioned, all those things. If you understand those principles and how to use them, it almost doesn't matter. I could shoot this podcast on my phone or on an actual webcam, and it would probably look pretty much the same as what it looks like right now because the lighting is what is making this look decent.
Yeah. So when I got my softbox, it came in a set of 2 lights. So it was like £80. It was 2 softbox lights with all the stands and all that, and then it came with the green screen set. So I had like, where is it? I've got like these just like on my desk, and I essentially use them to like mount things onto my desk and stuff. But it's like I've got those because it came with a green screen, and it got to the point where I literally, where was it? It was along this wall originally, and then it was behind where the camera is, along the wall around the corner. I tacked a green screen to the wall, and there's quite a few sort of like my earlier YouTube videos, where you can just like I'm standing by a green screen, and this was like my studio. I literally blacked out the window so there wasn't any light coming in, which again, health and safety gone mad because there's a heater right below it. So that was really stupid. It did the trick. And then so lighting and all that. But looking at it now, you don't need to spend 80 quid on lights. Like, where is it? This thing, LED panel, does everything this softbox does. It's probably just as bright. And it costs about 25, 30 quid, something like that. And it's battery powered. You just charge it up. And it does everything the softbox does. The only reason I use this is because, like, the cable I have for that was too short. Like, I just didn't I just didn't feel the need to use that. I've got a big softbox that I can use, but I feel like when we were getting into this, when like YouTube was what it was when we were getting into this, there wasn't as many product placements. Like it wasn't a thing of like, oh, if you like watch this video of me doing gaming montage for 5 minutes, but also check out this app. And I found myself, I'm like, I'm thinking of like, oh, I want just an app to play on my phone while I'm like, bored at work or something. And immediately things like Raid Shadow Legend will pop into my head. And I'm like, oh my God, like it's really weird how much
Yeah.
it sits in the back of your head. But I am quite thankful because when I was getting all my stuff, I couldn't just sort of look at the channels I watch now because most of them didn't exist. I had to just essentially go on Amazon and just go, right, this is the budget I've got. This is what I'm willing to spend. This is what I need. I didn't need anything fancy where it would flick between RGB and like tungsten or daylight or anything like that. I literally needed a light, which was daylight. It would turn on and it would
Yeah.
light me properly. That was it. That was the criteria.
There's
Whereas
always
now
like
it's
a
like, oh,
playlist of videos of people telling you what you need. Like
which
if you
light
search
you
best
need
light
and
for
why you need
YouTube
to
into the
spend.
YouTube search bar, you're gonna get a fat lot of videos of all these YouTubers who have more money than you, more experience than you, and also more sponsorships than you, telling you to buy this because it's the best thing ever. Like it's just
One thing I do want to get at some point is the Elgato lights.
I saw those the other day.
Just because like they're LED panels, because they mount to your desk like how I've got my microphone mounted. They mount to your desk and you can control them via your computer or via an app or something. So you can literally like that. That's just me being lazy though. Because I literally I don't even have to stand up. I can just lean and flick the switch on this light.
But
And it does everything I need it to. But it's
one of those things where if you are like those Elgato lights, I don't know how much they are. I'm guessing they're relatively expensive for what they are.
I think
it's one of those things where like if you're a professional streamer or something like that, or if you're a professional filmmaker and stuff, it makes sense to invest.
For one of them,
yeah, I thought
120 quid.
So if you're a professional and essentially time is money when you're a professional, it makes sense to invest in the better equipment because one, it's quicker to set up, it provides better results, and you can take it with you throughout your career. But if you're an amateur or if you're just someone who's just getting into it, you're just getting started, you don't need to get all this stuff. You just need to make it work. Like time isn't money when you're just trying to figure out how to do something. Like, I don't. My office right now, it's fairly streamlined, but I have to put the light up. I've got to set that light up. I've got to set that light up. I've got to put the camera here, and all that takes time. Probably takes me like sort of 30 minutes to get everything sort of ready to do this, and have the image look like that. Which if I did podcasts professionally or if I did streaming professionally, I might think that's too much time. If you're a streamer who streams for an hour at a time, 30 minutes of setup, that's half the time. Like,
yeah.
So it makes sense that you'd invest in something that makes it very easy. So if those are Elgato lights, for example, it makes sense for you to invest in those because if you're doing it professionally, every second, every minute that you save counts. So if you can have those lights set up and you can just go boop and they're on, you're ready to go. That's good. Like, and the same with like YouTubers who have these big, like almost cinema level cameras just sat in their studios ready to do these talking head pieces. Like the average person, that's ridiculous. You don't need that. Just set your camera up. You don't need to have an A cam, a B cam, a C cam, a D cam. You just need to have a camera somewhere. Because to you, you don't have to do it as quickly as they do. They're churning out videos on almost a daily basis because that's their job. So you, as an someone who's just getting started, you have the time.
I mean, maybe by like episode 100 of this, we might invest a bit of money. But at the minute, it's literally it gives us a reason to chat. We just sit here for an hour or two and we just chat. But when we were trying to work out how, like, logistically, how were we going to film this? Because there was one point where we were like, we'll just film it on our cameras and just send the files to each other. And immediately in my head, I was like, right, where would I put the camera? Because I need to be able to see you, so I need to be able to see my screen. But the camera needs to be behind the screen, or it needs to be roughly where it is now. So how the hell am I going to do that? And one of the options which came to my head was I could get a wall mount. I could just mount it onto the wall. And realistically, that it's a viable option. I don't know how well that will go down like my mum or something, because that's modifying the house. But yeah, it's one of those things where I was like, I could do it. And then I took a step back from the situation. I was like, right, if I just move my desk back like a foot, I can get a tripod behind there, which also then means I can get my softbox behind there, which then means I can do this and this.
It all starts to fall together, and it makes sense.
It will just.
It's.
But I've seen some streamers where, like you say, they've got A cam, B cam. I can't remember who it is. It was like it was a podcast, so it was obviously it had to be somewhat professional, but it was a big room. And that's in front of the camera. There's obviously people behind the cameras operating them there. They had about 5 different camera angles for 2 people. I think you had a wide, you had a slightly closer wide. You had obviously individual shots of both of them, and then you had a moving camera throughout the whole thing, which was obviously on a track or something. It's like, that's so much.
At that point, it becomes a bit too much. Like if you're like doing like a piece for 60 minutes, then sure, that setup makes sense. But a podcast, that's a bit much for me. But
if it was like a professional thing for TV, sure.
But it's funny you mentioned about the positioning your camera and stuff, because obviously for our loyal viewers, you'll know this is a different camera angle for me. Usually I'm sort of facing this way, and like I was watching old podcasts back when I was editing them and uploading them, and I wasn't a massive fan of the way the camera would be there, but then my screen would be here, so I would be sort of looking off like this for the majority of the podcast, because I'm looking at you, I'm looking at Matt as you're talking. And I had this issue because I used to have a massive desk where I could put a tripod on my desk behind my TV, behind my monitor.
Yeah.
But that desk is gone now because it was bigger than most of the room. So now I've got a smaller desk. But like today, I ordered last night, but it arrived today. It was just this is the only money that I've invested in this podcast so far ever, and it's not even really for the podcast. It's just a byproduct of what I can use it for. It's like, I can't show you it because the camera's on it right now, but it's like there's a stand that clamps onto a desk. It's a pole, and your camera goes on top of it. That's it. And I think it's like £16.
I want to get one of those.
And on it, hey, I'll drop you an affiliate link.
Yeah. Oh, you'll have to link me that, because that's another thing I was looking at. It's like, because then I could move my desk back a bit. Because at the minute I'm literally sat in the middle of the room because the desk had to be pulled back.
Yes. So now with that, not only is my angle is different, and I was unsure about the background at first, because I thought I used to like obviously the biggest tip to like get depth out of a small room is to shoot diagonally across it, so you get the longest cross section. So I thought this might look a bit flat, which is why I put more effort into the lighting to make it look a bit less flat.
Why do you think I've got the accent light at the back here? You have something.
But now, like, I have the camera above the monitor. It's a couple inches away from your eye line, so I'm just looking in one direction the whole time. And I've not watched it back, but I feel like this is probably going to work better as a podcast thing in the future. And that was just a few minutes of thought and like 15 quid of investment to change this. It doesn't have to be, I didn't have to like set the camera up over there and move everything around and invest in different lights, and I don't have to get like a big bendy tripod, a big magic arm to move the camera around. It's just think about it, and there's probably a cheap solution. I almost didn't even get this because I have some spare wood like in my wardrobe over there, because that's something that I have apparently. And I was almost like, I'm not going to spend the money. I can just drill this piece of wood into the thing and then put the camera on top of that. But then I thought I might as well get something that actually works. But there's always solutions to problems which you create for yourself.
Well, DIY filmmaking is where I started. Like the way I had. Oh my god, can I even remember it? So. I don't think I've got it anymore. But essentially, the first microphone setup I had, like I said, was a Guitar Hero microphone, which I got for a birthday when I was like 10.
This is funny because I once made a YouTube video back when I was like little with a Guitar Hero microphone.
But it was a USB microphone.
Yeah.
It did exactly what I needed it to do, but I didn't have a tripod for it. So what ended up happening was I taped it. No, it's not something. I just taped it on top of that. So on top of my Gorilla Pod, and that did the trick. But before I had the Gorilla Pod, what I had was a glasses case with just something propping it up at the front. I think I'm pretty sure it was something like that. So it was like a pen with a glasses case and the microphone coming off the top there, and that's what my setup was. Because I didn't have the money, and I was also like, I don't need to spend the money, which I don't have, because I can do it myself. Look, I can do this and this and this. And it's one of those things. If you don't have the money, you become a lot more creative. When you have the money, you're like, why do I don't need to think about it. I can just spend the money and something else can do it for me.
It's just another case of, at the professional level, time is money. So a product will exist for almost any sort of small niche thing, like, all these little mini tripods and little adapters and little arms and different things. All these things exist to save professionals time, essentially. They don't exist because there is no other way to do it. Like, tripods don't even really need to be a thing. If you've got enough books lying around your house, you could stack books up high enough, and that would give you the same results as a tripod. But if you're a professional, turning up to someone's house for a shoot or something with a van full of books instead of a tripod isn't going to work. So all these.
Could you imagine a crane shop made out of books? It's just someone on a sled going down books.
Like, all these things exist to save professionals time, and with the boom of YouTube and all these influencers and talking about these professional things to people who aren't professionals, it makes people want more than they really need. Which, again, there's nothing wrong with making that kind of content. I watch it all the time. I love it, and occasionally I fall victim to it. I buy something that I don't really need, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where you don't have to throw money at every problem that you have. You just don't.
Yeah. Well, it's like, we're going back to like these clamp things I've got. I got these with the green screen, which I bought because I wanted the lights. The green screen was just a happy coincidence, which I ended up using for like one YouTube video, I think, which we will not go into because it's awful. But these clamps will work as a headset rest for me. I put my headset on them. But it's a Corsair headset, and Corsair sell you a headset stand, which has got RGB lights and all that. But it'll put you back about 70 quid. So it's like, that's pretty much as this headset costs, like, if not more. And it is a thing of, because I had this attitude of, I don't have the money, so I can't buy that. I was like, well, what could I use instead? Well, I've got these weird clamp things I'm not using for anything else. Cool, there you go. And it does the trick. And I do feel like if you've just sat and watched YouTube videos and decided I'm going to do that as well, and you're, I don't know, like 15 or whatever, starting out on YouTube, don't go into it expecting to have to spend $3,000 to get a decent setup. Like we've both said, we started with desk lamps with a bit of paper over the top to make it a soft light. I started on a point and shoot camera. Elliot started on a camera worth like 200 quid.
I showed it last week on the podcast, didn't I? I started on, where is it?
Oh yeah, little point in the middle.
No, that's the second one. I didn't start on that one. I don't want to lie to the people.
There's another one. But it's like, yeah, we both, there's no need to spend. Oh my god, I forgot how small that was.
Look at it, it's broken now as well. Look at that, holes in it, all sorts. I started on this. Many great paintball and airsoft content videos shot on this. That's not true. They were all terrible, but
many videos we shot. A couple of them might have been all right. But it's a thing of, you shouldn't go into filmmaking or YouTube or whatever it is. You shouldn't go into it expecting to have to spend money until you're making money. Like, if you're putting in more money just for the sake of it, you're essentially fighting an uphill battle. Like you're putting out, so you're gonna get really frustrated and you're just gonna give up easier. It's like the reason why I've kept going on YouTube. Like I haven't uploaded an actual YouTube video in a while. That's just because of work and stuff. But the reason why I kept doing it was because I knew going into it, I knew I wasn't making money. I knew I didn't have a huge audience, but I enjoyed standing there and just talking shit to a camera for 20 minutes and editing it afterwards. Like it taught me what I know now, because I went into it not having money and knowing I'm not going to be making money. I'm just doing it because it's what I enjoy doing. Yeah.
A good tip to anyone who's like young and wants to like start a YouTube channel or just getting into filmmaking or something, and they see they've got their favorite filmmaker YouTubers or whatever, is to go onto their channel, go to their videos, go to their uploads, and sort them by oldest first, and watch their oldest videos. Now, most of the most of the sort of secure ones will leave up their old stuff. A lot of them take away their older stuff because they're embarrassed by it. But the ones who are more sort of secure with themselves, they will leave up their old stuff, and you will see just how far they've come from their first uploads to their current uploads. It's crazy. And if you can, try and find the videos of the YouTubers or filmmakers who look back at their early work. Like that Potato Jet guy, you don't watch him, but he did a video, it was ages ago now. He did a video of looking back at the very first films that he made with his friends and the very first After Effects that he used with his friends, where they just figured out how to fake fire in After Effects. And he went back and he obviously shot like a Sony like DV tape thing, and it's just that's the real process to getting better at filmmaking and photography and that stuff. The real bit is like making the bad stuff is what leads to making the good stuff. You don't die. Like I could have all this stuff right now. Like you mentioned about you haven't uploaded to YouTube for a while because of like work and stuff. Like I've got everything set up right now. I haven't uploaded to my YouTube properly. I've done like vlogs and stuff. I've not done a proper like talking headpiece because I'm not very good at it. I keep making the videos and then not uploading them. I probably should upload them because I'm trying to sort of figure out the process of talking to the camera. That is going to go further than like I'm not going to solve that problem by buying a better camera.
Yeah.
Like.
Well, another thing with all these big YouTubers, so say like someone like Casey Neistat, he didn't start where he did. Like he blew up on YouTube. But
I think that's a really good point. Sorry to interrupt. Is Casey Neistat, he exploded on YouTube because he did the daily vlogging thing before anyone else really did it. So he like exploded because of that. He shot that on a Canon 70D and again it's 11 to something. I think 1124, 11 to 18. I don't know. The wide angle version of the kit lens essentially. And these days you can get a 70D for £400 maybe, and you can get that lens for a couple £100 as well, which is still a lot of money to some people, but in the grand scheme of filmmaking stuff, it's very, very cheap. And he exploded onto YouTube success using basically the same like camera that a lot of us have now, like the 80D I've got now. He used that in the second sort of half of his daily vlogging cycle, and he used to use those cheap cameras, and they just worked. But his content worked because he was good at being content.
Yeah, like going back to my point is you don't see everything. Like when I release a video, I've spent like, to be fair, I did get into a real grind of like I could shoot a video and have it uploaded 2 hours later. Like I got into a real sort of rhythm of it because I knew how I edited, I knew my style, and I got natural filmed cameras. But I'd film like 25-minute video and you'd see 8 minutes of it because I've cut out a whole segment or all of the bits of me going trying to think of what to say. So it's what you see presented to you.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, they've sat there for a long time and debated about does this need to be in here?
Yeah.
Because it's with like David Dobrik, huge on YouTube at the minute, very, very successful, and all the people around him very successful. but you don't see them all waking up in the morning and going, "Oh, what the fuck am I having for breakfast today?" Oh, I don't know. You might do. I don't watch them. But you don't see the mundane elements of their life because, excuse me, you don't see the mundane elements because that's not what you're there to watch. You're there to watch their fantastical life. That's why you enjoy watching them, because they've got this life you really, really want. If you're trying to put yourself on the same pedestal as them, as the people who've been doing it for a decade, you're immediately at a disadvantage because you're saying, why is my stuff not as good as them? Where, yeah, like you said, if you look at their oldest stuff, you'll see where they started. And it's, I don't know if you watch Marquez Brownlee,
Yeah.
MKBHD. If you see his oldest stuff, it is
I used to
awful.
watch him when he first started out because he was one of the few people who did a review of a phone that I wanted to get, because it wasn't like a big, like, amazing phone. It was sort of a middle to lower range phone, and he was one of the few YouTubers who actually did a review on it. So I watched him back when he was recording things like on a little point and shoot and stuff. I remember sort of I watched him a lot when I was getting like a phone upgrade, and like every 2 years I'd come to get an upgrade on my phone, and it was kind of funny because I'd search for the phone, get the phone, and 2 years later I'd search for more phones, and I'd see his videos again, and every time I'd be like, oh, it's the same guy, and it's like seeing these like quantum leaps in growth in those 2 year gaps in the times where I was looking for phones.
Because I've been watching him for years. Like, when I say his old stuff was awful, I don't mean him. Like, he's great presenting. It's just his camera was, yeah, like you said, like point and shoot stuff. Looking at it now, he shoots on like
Yeah,
8K red cameras,
yeah,
and it's, to be fair, with that, that's literally because they've got the ability
yeah.
to do
He did
so.
a video with
But
Peter McKinnon, and Peter was like, "Why do you shoot in 8K? What is the advantage?" He was like, "Well, it is sharper, like, but you don't see it once it's on YouTube because compression, and we output at 4K." So he was like, "So why?" He was like, "Because I like it."
because we
He's
can,
like, "Because I like it."
yeah.
He's like that. He's like,
But
"The 8K is just for me."
it's one of those things where on a like 16 gigabyte 16 gigabyte SD card in 1080p,
You're
you
good
could
for
record
hours.
a couple like hours, yeah, like a few hours. At 8K, if you're recording on a 16 gigabyte SSD, you better have about 30 of them ready to go, because the I don't think people appreciate how big resolution is. Like, the step up from 1080 to 4K is phenomenal. From 4K to 8K, it doubles. From 8K to 12K, I'm pretty sure it doubles again. And it's just these file sizes, because the project I'm working on at the minute, shooting in 6.5K. Um, I essentially do a lot of the data dumping from what we're recording. Um, and what is it? We record, like I say, 6.5K. And I think every hour or so, we're dumping about 80 gigabytes of data. It's stupid how much stuff we go through. And that's not even, I don't even think we're recording in 6.5K, because we're recording the output that they're giving us. Like, you've got camera department who are recording 6.5K, and then we're recording separately. Um, so we're recording in a lower output, but still we're putting out like 80 gigabytes of data like every hour, and across like a 12-hour
That's
day,
a lot.
which is like most days. That's a lot of
Yeah,
data. That's pretty much a terabyte every single day
yeah.
is
It's like,
being
well,
put
it's like
out, and
this.
it's
The 80D, it shoots raw pictures, and the
mhm.
raw picture resolution, it's about 6K. The still images. I think there might be a little bit more actually. I'm
Yeah.
not even sure. Um, or a bit less, and it's around 6K. And each still image at that resolution on for photos is about it's like 25 to 30 megabytes depending on what your settings are. And you think about that, and like there's 24 frames in a second, and if each frame is like 25 30 megabytes, you can see how it scales up so ridiculously.
Oh yeah, it's insane. Because I can't. I'm pretty sure we googled it. Like,
Yeah,
I talked
yeah,
about it before, maybe like with Matt or something.
mean, it's big.
Yeah, it's stupid. Like how big is I want to see how big a 1 minute 8K video is. So 8K. Any guesses?
1 minute. I want to guess 382 gigabytes.
382 gigabytes.
Is it?
Okay, it's not. It's 121
see,
and a
I was
half
going to say
gigabytes
126,
per
but
minute.
I thought that was
per minute. That's insane. That's actually ridiculous. How big? Can I even see how big 12K is per minute? 12K and then the 1 minute of 4K is can't write. It's saying 375 megabytes. That's not right. But yeah, so that's a lot of data which you're recording. So it's with NKBHD, like Marquez, when he's recording his 10-minute videos, that's like a terabyte of footage in just what you see.
It's a big commitment to go.
That's huge commitment. The amount of storage they must go through. Like, I'm guessing they've got like 20 terabyte raids they go through.
I think he might have. He did a collab with Linus Tech Tips a long time ago. I think he might have a petabyte storage thing, which is 1,000 terabytes.
Oh, is that it?
Linus Tech Tips, they did. They call it Petabyte Project, and that's a petabyte is 1,000 terabytes, and that's what Linus Tech Tips have on their server. It's all solid state as well, I think, and that's what they use to edit off. Okay. And then they did their collab, and Linus did the same thing for MKBHD, but I don't know if it was a petabyte, but it was still a lot. Anyway, we've been going for about 90 minutes. And I can tell we went for quite a while because my light died, so I just changed the battery. That's how I know, because those batteries last for about an hour and 25 minutes in that light on full power.
Yeah.
So that's quite a good guide for me to know when we're getting to the end. So have you got a question of the week?
No, I have a question, but I'm going to phrase it as a statement, which is from personal experience and talking to those in the industry. If you're trying to get into the film industry, the best way to do it is just work experience and just meet people. There's not going to be any course or any just sort of anything you can do which is going to guarantee you work. The best way to do it is get the job I've got now, is I do work experience with this company. I wasn't paid for it. I don't even think they covered travel. Like, I literally just went, showed I was keen, and then lo and behold, they offered me a bit of work. So that's the best thing to do. If you're thinking about getting in the industry, just apply for work experience and say, yeah, look, I'm ready to learn. I'm really keen. What can I do? So that is not a question of the week. It's George's little advice of the week. There you go.
George's food for thought.
George's food for thought. If you're trying to get in the industry, just start at the bottom. Don't expect to walk into this high-paid job. I've been working in the industry for a little over a year now, and I'm still at rock bottom pretty much. Like, it's a long and slow climb, but yeah, just work hard and hopefully you can find some work.
But I feel like it's one of those things where the more you've done, the more you can do. Because every new experience, every new work experience you go to, every new small job you go to is another handful of people that you've met and another people you've made an impression on, and so you'll go, and I'm sure you'll probably get a call back from your current people some point in the future when their next project comes along. Once you're on the list. Yeah.
Well, I actually got an email from a company I was working with last year saying, like, what's your availability next month? And I'm not working next month, so I might have work.
Yeah, so if you can get yourself on the list, the email list, whatever it is, by any means necessary.
Just get on their radar, and 9 times out of 10 they'll look after you.
Very nice. George's food for thought.
Yes.
I liked that. That might be a new segment. Every week you impart wisdom upon the several viewers.
I've got a question of the week and food for thought. Right,
You've
cool.
got 2 gimmicks. I've not even got one yet. You're becoming too powerful.
Well, we'll wrap it up here because we've been going for a while now. So thank you for watching. Hopefully this has been somewhat interesting.
Ranting about gear,
tidbits and life stories, a little bits of tech and stuff. But hopefully it's been interesting. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you did, then please give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing. Leave a comment down below if there's anything you want us to talk about. I've been George. He's been Elliot. You've been watching the Mise-En-Sesh podcast, and we will see you in the next one. Goodbye.
Goodbye, treasured viewer.